Hey, it's Mike here from 2M Football. Before we get started today, I have to make an apology. In going back and watching our Dolphins video, I called Jarvis Landry, the wide receiver, Landry Jones, who, of course, is the backup quarterback in Pittsburgh. I don't know how it happened. Luckily, our editor saved me by putting the correct name in the graphic. But I just wanted to clear the air there. I realized there was a mistake. Luckily, no one called me on it, but I realized it, and I apologize.
Hello everybody, welcome back to 2M Football.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Matt, and we are finishing up the AFC West today. And the AFC Conference.
Oh, that's right.
Oh my goodness,
It's a big moment.
we are 4/4 of the way through one half of the conference, because I like throwing up all those fractions like I did last time.
Yeah, so the final AFC team is the Los Angeles Chargers. I didn't catch myself there for a second.
It's so weird to say.
It is weird.
So if we accidentally call them the San Diego Chargers, don't hurt us, because I'm sure a lot of the fans still think of them as the San Diego Chargers.
And I know a lot of fans didn't want them to leave. It's kind of sad, really, that they ended up relocating.
LA made sense. The LA Rams. They went back to where they came from in a way. So that was okay. But I don't get why now, like, you have the Raiders want to move to Las Vegas, and the Chargers are now in LA. It's all messed up.
Especially because the stadium they're going to be playing in for the next few years while the new one is built is a soccer field that only can hold 30,000 people. I think it was Melvin Gordon who made the comment about it, that he hasn't played for a crowd that small since high school. And it probably doesn't really make a difference, but there's just got to be something exciting about stepping on the field to 60,000 plus screaming fans every week. And it'll be less than half that this year.
They'll have to pull a Falcons and pump outside fan noise.
That's a good reference. I like it. So, back to the Chargers. In 2016, the San Diego Chargers, because that's what they still were 5-11, which was last place in the AFC West. But honestly, they look better than any 5-11 team I think I've ever seen. They had some crazy losses, and they did look much better than that record indicates. 8 of their 11 losses were by 7 points or fewer, and their biggest margin of loss was 12. So they never got blown out. They were in every single game. A lot of them just didn't go their way, unfortunately.
It's weird, too, because everything happened in the fourth quarter. That's what this team was known for, was just a fourth quarter flunk.
So, to that point, I wrote down their first 4 losses that were all by,
You might want to grab some popcorn and pull up a chair, because this is going to be a while.
This is super, and it's entertaining, though, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. Starting in week 1. Matt's bored already. In week 1, they were at the Chiefs. They're up 27-10 with 13 minutes in the fourth quarter. So essentially 1 quarter left, you're up by 3 scores. Well, they gave up 17 points in that quarter without managing to score themselves. And then the game went to overtime, where they lost on an Alex Smith touchdown run. So they lost that game 33-27. Week 2, they won week 2 against Jacksonville. That was good. Week 3 at Colts, they were up 22-20 with a minute and a half left.
And this makes no sense to me. I don't even.
And they let T.Y. Hilton take a short pass, 63 yards for the game-winning touchdown.
It's the Colts.
And they ended up losing that game 26-22. They went for 2 and didn't get it. Doesn't matter. Then week 4, very next week against the Saints, they're up 34-21. 2 touchdowns, essentially, with under 5 minutes in the game. And they give up 2 quick touchdowns on short fields because of turnovers. First, Melvin Gordon was guilty. He fumbled on their own 13.
Oh, don't even get me started with him. He's the reason I lost my head-to-head fantasy league this year.
That's got a personal beef with Gordon. So Gordon fumbles on their own 13. Saints recover, easy touchdown. Next drive, they're still up by 6 with under 4 minutes left. Travis Benjamin catches a ball and fumbles on San Diego's 31. Saints get it there, and they score again. Now they're up by a point, but it's okay. They've got a good offense. They've got one more chance. Rivers throws an interception on the final drive, and they lose 35-34. Just got one more for you. Week 5, the very next week. They're playing against the Raiders in Oakland, and they're down 34-31, attempting a game-tying field goal with 2 minutes left in the game. They fumble the snap through the hands of the holder, who then gets tackled immediately. and there was no field goal attempt. Raiders took over and killed the clock, and they lost that one 34-31. So these are just 4 examples of just such painful ways they lost games.
And the most painful loss was against Cleveland. And they would have won that one, but the only bad part is they were on such a time crunch that they never got the kick set. And it was an embarrassing loss for San Diego, a huge win for Cleveland.
As we mentioned in the Cleveland show, it was the Cleveland show.
Did you really just say that?
That was an accident. In the Browns show, it was their only win of the year.
And the thing is, if they had literally 2 more seconds to plant that kick better, they would have won.
So, like I said, they were a good team. They deserved to be better than 5-11, I believe. And another thing that didn't help them was injuries. They had some of their key players out for large portions of the season. And the first one that happened was in week 1. Keenan Allen, their number 1 wide receiver for the second year in a row, suffered a season-ending injury early on in the season. Can't get much earlier than week 1 this year.
Well, you could get injured in preseason.
You could. Oh, that's a good point.
Or training camp.
Or off-season OTAs.
So.
Or just anytime you're driving and a pizza starts to fall. Nate Burleson reference.
I don't think anybody's going to get that, but I like it.
Lions fans will. He was on their team then, I think. But anyway, so Keenan Allen went out week 1, torn ACL, didn't play at all. Well, he caught 6 passes in week 1. And then tore his ACL and didn't come back. Danny Woodhead, their top pass-catching running back, in week 2 also tore his ACL, and he didn't return this year.
I was more upset about his loss. Yeah. I like Danny Woodhead. He was good when he was with the Patriots.
Right. I like Danny Woodhead too, and he's my free agency pick, so we'll get into him a little more later.
Oh.
That's called foreshadowing.
Dun, dun, dun.
And later on, they were already out of the playoffs, but Melvin Gordon got injured in week 14 and didn't come back.
Yeah, I remember that.
What was it? 5 rushing yards that game, and then 0.5 fantasy points, and then he went out.
Yeah, went out in the first quarter. Thanks.
And then
I pulled within 5 points of beating Mike. So if Melvin Gordon had stayed healthy in that game, I would have won that week.
And then Travis Benjamin, the receiver they signed from Cleveland last offseason, he missed a few games with a PCL injury, and he actually had knee surgery just a few months ago. So this team faced a lot of adversity. I believe they should have been better than what they actually were. And I think they will be next year.
I just think, given the situation, I don't necessarily agree with the fact they fired Mike McCoy.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it was his fault. I mean, when you have that many players going down and a quarter of them are season ending, which means you're not getting them back.
Right.
It's hard to juggle all that. And he kind of worked with what he could, but I think it was because of these fourth quarter issues.
Right, because some of them are just fluky. It has nothing to do with preparation or whatever, like the fumbling of the snap. Like, that's just a freak thing that happens. But giving up, like the Chiefs one, for example, giving up 17 points in the fourth quarter while not scoring yourself is an issue. The turnovers, these are things that should be
addressed in practice.
Yeah, and they can be affected by coaching. Yeah, new head coach is Anthony Lynn. He was with the Bills last year, I believe. And we'll see how that goes. As a whole, the offense this season was pretty good. They averaged 25.6 points per game, which was 9th in the league, 356 yards per game, which was 14th, 262 pass yards per game, which was 8th, and just 94 rush yards per game, which was 26th. So it all starts with Phillip Rivers. He's 35 years old. He's played 13 years in the NFL, all of them with the Chargers. And he started every game for them since 2005.
That was an awesome draft situation, because those of you who don't know this little story about Phil Rivers, he almost went to the New York Giants. Because him and Eli Manning got drafted in the same class. And Rivers didn't want to go to New York. He wanted to go to San Diego. And by pure the two teams happened to talk, they agreed on the trade. And the rest is, as we know, history.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how close they were to these names not being with the teams that we know of them to be.
Right, and I'd say it worked out for both of them.
They both are happy. They both were franchise quarterbacks and both made their organizations proud.
Yeah, and Rivers had another good season this year, completing 60% of his passes for 4,300 yards, 33 touchdowns, but 21 interceptions. The touchdowns were fourth most in the league, but he threw more interceptions than anyone. And just that stat alone reminded me a lot of my favorite football player ever, Brett Favre. He holds the NFL record, or actually Peyton broke it, didn't he? For a while, he held the NFL record for most touchdown passes, but the one that he probably will hold forever is he's also thrown more interceptions than anyone else. So,
including Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Ryan Fitzpatrick has more 6 interception games than Favre, probably. I don't know that for sure. But anyway, Rivers is really good. He's 35, but I don't think he's declining.
I think it was his receiver core was a lot of the reason for the turnovers.
They were decimated. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good point. I have more on that. You're correct.
Yeah, I hope so. We kind of do this for half of our life.
Yeah, it's true.
20 to 30 hours a week. This is what we do. I hope I'm right on something.
So, moving on to the running back position. As we've already mentioned, the starting back is Melvin Gordon. This is his second year in the league after the Chargers selected him number 15 overall in the 2015 draft, and Gordon really broke out this year. He was really disappointing as a rookie, averaging just 3.5 yards per carry, and somehow didn't find the end zone once, despite starting almost the whole year at running back. 0 touchdowns. He bounced back, though, in a big way this year. Got his rushing average up to 3.9, which is still lower than you want it to be. But he got 997 yards and 10 touchdowns.
And if he had stayed in, he would have definitely had, obviously, well over 1,000 rushing yards and probably at least 4 more touchdowns.
Right, because he missed almost 4 games with that injury. And he also caught 41 balls for another 400 yards and 2 more touchdowns. So he's looking good. And we can expect him to be back and leading the backfield again next year.
Until I put him in my fantasy lineup.
Right. So if you ever see Matt have him in his lineup, you know he's in for a bad game, so no one else should start him.
I don't know if that's the proper fantasy advice to give, but...
And the other guy that's really interesting in this backfield is Danny Woodhead. As we already talked about, he missed almost all of this past year with the torn ACL. And unfortunately, season-ending injuries have been a little bit more common for him recently. In 2014, he missed 13 games that year with a broken leg, suffered really early on in the season, which was unfortunate. But when he's on the field, he is very productive. Going back to the 2015 season, because that's the last full year he played, he had over 1,000 total yards and 9 total touchdowns. In the year, he caught 80 passes. That's more than some receivers get, for 755 yards and 6 scores. And I just thought this was crazy. He only has 2 fumbles in his career.
Whoa, no way.
Yeah, in over 10 years in the NFL. And almost all of it is a starting running back somewhere. He was with New England for a while.
That's like, you can't even dream of that. You hope for less than 2 fumbles a year.
We were talking about Devontae Booker last time with the Broncos. He had 4 in half a season.
Which is twice as much as Woodhead's had his entire 10-year career.
13 years, yeah. So I thought that was interesting and definitely a testament to what a secure ball handler he is. And he's really versatile because they do use him as a running back too. Mm-hmm. And what I thought was interesting is that despite his really small frame, I didn't write it down, he's a little guy. They use him around the goal line too. They'll do shotgun runs from the 2 or 3 yard line and give it to Woodhead. And with a guy his size, he can kind of hide behind the offensive lineman almost. Like they can't see him sometimes over the heads of the line.
I'm trying to think of the Philadelphia player that was like that.
Oh, Darren Sproles.
Yeah. Sproles is the same way.
Yeah.
They just get lost because everyone's waiting for the big burly dude to come through, and they kind of find and they can fit through the tiniest of gaps, which is a huge help. Because if you have an offensive line that can't create the semi-truck sized gaps, then you need somebody to fit through the small ones.
Yeah, for sure. And he's a good route runner for a running back. He can easily fool a linebacker with a quick cut, something like that. He's just really versatile. I really hope they bring him back because he's only 32 years old. The injuries have become a concern recently. The rest of his career, it hasn't been that way. So I think they can sign him for a couple years and feel pretty confident that they'll have him. The other running back in this backfield that got significant playing time when Gordon went out is Kenneth Farrow. He was signed as an undrafted free agent in 2016, but he looked bad. He just had 192 rushing yards, 3.2 average. He lost a fumble and caught 13 passes for 70 yards. So I think it's important for them to bring Woodhead back to be the backup / receiving role in that back.
Well, I think too, the fact that you lost Gordon, then you lost Woodhead, then you lost Gordon. I mean, at that point, you're scraping the bottom. I mean, this is like the Bengals all over again, where you're down to your third, fourth string running back, and you can't always expect your third string, fourth string running back. Rex Burkhead was an exception, just to come out of the blue and be like, I know I'm awesome. But I think Farrow will see more time, and especially, too, if Woodhead has his injury prones, even if they do re-sign him, they just got to watch it. So they might not put him tons of time on the field just because they want him to make it through the season.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point, too.
So I could see Farrow sharing a rotational role with Woodhead as the backup. Mm-hmm. Gives him experience and keeps Woodhead not on the field as much, limiting injuries and contact.
Yeah, so that's the backfield situation. At wide receiver, we already mentioned Keenan Allen. He's 24 years old. Last summer, he signed a 4-year contract extension that'll keep him with the team through 2020. And he's so good when he's on the field, but he's had, obviously, trouble staying there lately. He has yet to complete a full season in the NFL as a starter due to various injuries. Obviously, this year, missed 15 games with the ACL tear. He missed 8 games last year with the lacerated kidney, which sounds very painful. He missed 2 games in 2014 with ankle and shoulder injuries. He'll be back, obviously. He'll have had almost a full calendar year to recover from the ACL tear, since that's the good part of it happening so early on in the season.
Is you have the time. You're not crushed between the end of the season, OTAs, and then
training camp and preseason. Yeah. So hopefully he'll be back full strength, ready to go. But the guy who really emerged was Tyrell Williams. And he's in his second year, and he became the number 1 receiver for the team after Allen went out. Williams had 69 catches for over 1,000 yards, averaged 15 per catch, which is pretty high, and 7 touchdowns. And he was one of the big play guys of his offense. He had 19 catches that went for more than 20 yards, and 6 catches that went for more than 40 yards. He's really productive, but as Matt mentioned earlier, several of Rivers' interceptions were due to miscommunications with Williams when he was targeting him on passes. And because of that, I say he has a lot to learn in the offense, and he really has to work on his chemistry with Rivers so that they're on the same page always. That would result in
a drop in those interceptions.
There were at least 3 to 4 to Williams specifically where they just weren't on the same page.
And Rivers has the experience to know better. He just anticipates, when you've been around in the league so long, you just expect your players to know what they're doing.
Right.
And it kind of showed right there that this guy has some learning to do.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him as the number 2 receiver next year with Allen, and obviously as the number 1. Because the other guy there, Travis Benjamin, was a little bit of a disappointment. Now, he missed some time with injuries, so that was part of it, but he was outproduced by Williams and another guy, Dontrell Inman. Both were more productive than Travis Benjamin was this year. The year he was with the Browns that he really broke out in 2015, he had 68 catches, almost 1,000 yards, averaged 14 per catch, and had 5 touchdowns that were, I think, all on deep passes. So they brought him in hoping that he'd be that deep threat, but he just had 47 catches, 675 yards, and just 4 touchdowns for them this year. So we'll see what they decide to do, but I think Williams was good enough that they'll put him in at the number 2 receiver spot and only bring in Benjamin in 3 wide receiver sets or specific situations where they want his speed and deep threat ability on the field. But they're all pretty young. This is a young wide receiver core, and that's good news. Moving on to tight end. They have 2 guys here that are interesting. Antonio Gates, he's the veteran. He's 36 years old. This past year was his 14th year, all with the Chargers, and he's still productive at that age. His receiving yards have decreased each of the past 4 seasons, and only 548 this year, but he still scored 7 touchdowns, so he's still a red zone threat. They still want him on the field, and he and Rivers have been together, both of them, they've been together their whole careers, so they have a great chemistry.
Mike knows the aggravation of him starting, because I used him against Mike.
I do. And the other guy that's the tight end here is Hunter Henry. He was a 2nd-round pick in the draft this past year, and he really showed a lot of promise in the passing game. Henry caught 36 balls for 478 yards and 8 touchdowns. And it's kind of assumed that he's going to take the starting role from Gates at some point. But Gates is another one of these veteran players that we seem to be running into a lot.
Just doesn't want to, give up.
Right. Playing into his late 30s, not showing major signs of decline. The thing about Henry is he's not a very good run blocker at this point, which is maybe something they can try to work on with him. This was just his rookie season. So,
I mean, you don't expect, massive outperformance abilities, but you want to show some some confirmation you made the right choice of picking him up. And I think Hunter Henry is that.
Yeah, he looked great in the passing game. We mentioned the 8 touchdowns, but definitely need to work with him on his blocking, especially because they have one of the worst offensive lines in the league. As a group, they gave up the second most pressures per pass attempt in the league, and they weren't any better in run blocking. Their running backs averaged just 1.5 yards before contact per carry. So they were being hit almost immediately by defenders.
And they allowed 36 sacks against Farrow. That's 2 a game.
Yeah.
And at 34, 35 years old as a quarterback,
you don't want him taking hits that many.
Even one sack can be like rattle your jaw a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, all it takes is one, unfortunately, for something to happen that can end a season potentially. Look at Carr, we just talked about. He wasn't sacked very often, but obviously the one broke his leg.
Mariota,
yeah. So they definitely want to do a better job keeping him clean. The best player on this line, I'd say, is Matt Slauson, the center, but every other position could potentially be addressed and improved upon. And that's the offense in a nutshell.
Yeah. Over to the defensive end.
Defensive end.
No, I did not intend that at all. Because of their change, Mike had to do some digging, and I didn't know how to find it, but actual numbers for each of these stats were hard to find because if you look under San Diego Chargers, it brings you up to LA Chargers. And since they haven't technically played yet,
there's no stats.
Yeah. So I have their points, yards versus the pass and versus the rush, and their rankings overall. So they were 29th overall against points, 16th in total yards, 20th versus the pass, and 10 versus the run, for whatever that's worth. Their defense looked okay. Not bad, and I know we've challenged the numbers we've found a few times on these instances. But there are 3 major things I saw. The biggest was the defense seemed to wear down by the fourth quarter. Specifically, the man-to-man coverage decreased. Its physicality decreased. The ability to keep up with these receivers decreased. And that's going to lead to a lot of big last-minute plays. Like we saw against Kansas City. You give up 17 points and you can't put anything on the board because your defense can't hold you. You would think your defense should be able to hold a 17-point lead.
Yeah, you would hope.
You hope your offense can score, but if not, you realize you have a 2-score cushion. You should feel comfortable, and yet you can't feel comfortable with a 3-score lead.
Yeah.
Defense-wise, they were terrible, and this was interesting, against the number 2 wide receiver. They ranked 23rd overall. They were 6th versus the number 1 wide receiver. So they were able to cover the number 1 really well, but they gave up a lot of plays to the number 2. Which means that their defense is drawing too much attention to the number 1 and not paying enough attention to the number 2. And then they were 24th at allowing passes up the middle, allowing a 30% completion against a deep middle pass and 23.5% completion percentage against the short. So against the middle, they were beaten pretty easily. And I think a lot of that has to do with a couple of rookies. One at linebacker named Jatavius Brown. He had 79 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 6 passes deflected. But he was a rookie this year. He's only 23. He's going to have time to develop, time to grow. And I think he showed great speed in a linebacking position. And I think what they need to have him do is drop off of the line, sort of back into a middle zone, and kind of spy on everything. Because all you need is a quick slant route right in the middle and take off. And a lot of these receivers are really good with yards after the catch. The sooner you can shut them down, the sooner you eliminate that problem. And another guy who everybody knows about is Joey Bosa.
Oh, yeah.
He's a defensive end, and I have to say he has a lot of high expectations for this team.
Once they got his whole contract situation worked out and actually got him on the field, he looked every bit like the top 5 draft pick.
4 tackles, 10.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. Don't seem like it, but he was a threat coming off the edge.
And he only played 12 games, so that's just something to keep in mind. 10.5 sacks in 12 games
is a great ratio.
For a rookie, too. And you assume he'll only get better. So that's exciting.
I have a feeling that he has a lot on the line coming in the next season, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It means that, at least for now, the numbers show they made a good choice.
Yeah.
And pass rush is something every team needs. especially when you get in these instances where your receivers are all on the bench or in a hospital somewhere with injuries. But he's good. I think they made a good choice. I just hope this continues. There's nothing worse than having a stellar rookie year, RG3, and then going downhill after that.
And since you mentioned pass rush, stop me if you have notes on this guy, but someone that I think we have to talk about is Melvin Ingram, the outside linebacker.
I don't, so go ahead.
He was actually a free agent, and in getting ready for this, I was going to suggest that we talk about him, but he did get franchise tagged by the team, which I think is a great decision. A little surprising because they're low on cap space. I don't think we expected that they'd be able to retain him, but they're going to spend the money, and I think they should. He's a 2012 first-round draft pick by the Chargers who was just starting to enter his prime. And he had some injury issues early in his career, but he's played 2 full seasons in back-to-back years. And he's put up 18 and a half sacks in those 2 seasons. And he just looks great. And I'm happy for the Chargers that they were able to get him back because he's going to be a key component of this pass rush. Him and Bosa combined was a really exciting thing to see this year.
It was a dynamic duo.
Yeah, so I'm glad they got him back. That was a good choice. But they have another free agent linebacker.
Yes, and I remember him people remember this guy for different reasons. I'm not big into watching a lot of college football, but in my household, I am the Ohio State fan. That was my dream college. I didn't get to go, unfortunately. Shed tears. But my uncle is a big Notre Dame fan. So those are the 2 teams, if you walked into our household, those are the 2 teams that are usually on the TV. And one of the most notable players from Notre Dame was Monte Teo. And he was one of the few players that when he got drafted, I knew who he was. I usually don't recognize a lot of rookies because I don't watch a lot of college football.
Right.
So, but it was kind of exciting for me to be like, oh, wait, I actually know this person.
Other people might know Teo for the whole fake girlfriend thing.
I don't know what that was all about. I don't...
It doesn't matter for football reasons.
No, I just don't... It was made a huge deal, but I didn't think it needed to be.
Yeah.
Thank you, media. That's why we don't do what the media does. I will say this. This is his 4th season with the Chargers. He's never played a full season. He's been nagged with injuries. And I'll have to say, and this is true with a lot of people, but he doesn't look like he did in college. In college, he was, and this is very, like I said, very rare that I get to talk about their college days because I've never really watched a lot of these players in college. Mm. But he was actually an exciting free agent for me to pick because I do remember him from his Notre Dame days. He was fast. He was physical. He was forceful. And I don't see this. In 2016, he played 3 games.
Oh, just 3?
That's what I said. That's what I wrote here.
Okay.
I think. Double check that before I do something stupid, please.
Go on in the meantime.
He only had 17 tackles, which is actually a lot in 3 games.
Yeah, it's okay.
But what I noticed in those games, and maybe it's because he had been ailing from previous injuries, but he wasn't fast and he wasn't as physical. Linebackers, especially inside linebackers, need to be physical. You are an inside complement to the edge rush. And anything that comes up the middle of the field, be it a run or a pass, it is your job to stop. Mm-hmm. And his tackling was kind of like how Pittsburgh does this sort of like check tackling, where they throw the shoulder and like they hope for the best. And I just didn't see him as he was in his college days. And it was kind of sad because he was a big name at Notre Dame, which is ironic to say that because Notre Dame, for those of you who don't know, if you ever watch their games, you will never see a name tag on the back of their jersey. Do you know why that is, Mike?
I do not.
Because the Notre Dame football philosophy is the emblem before the name. So you play for Notre Dame, you don't play for your name. So they've never had name tags on their jerseys because you're supposed to play for the school,
right,
and represent the school, not represent yourself. Which
cool.
They believe comes if you go on later in life and become a professional athlete, then you've earned that right to say, I'm playing for myself now.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Like I said, it's. I don't get to talk about college football all that often, but it was exciting that there was actually a free agent that I remember from those days.
I like it.
And I hate to say this because he spent years here. He has potential, but I think he needs to go. I don't see the same. Maybe he's just tired of the same scheme. Maybe with the coaching changes going on, something could happen. But if everything stands as is, he's just not the person that this defense needs. They need And it's weird to say that they need someone new when he's only 26.
Yeah.
But I don't know what happened. I just don't think he doesn't seem the same person he was when he first came in to San Diego.
Could be injuries taking a toll too. Like you said, he's never played a full season because of various injuries.
So maybe it's just he needs a different style, a different setup. Maybe he needs to work where it's more of a 4-3 rather than a 3-4 defense. I don't know. But he just doesn't look like this is what the Chargers need. And a struggling, especially in the middle of the field. So I hate to see him go, but I think that would be for the best. Or sign him to a very short contract and hope to see if he can play a full season.
See what a full, healthy season looks like from him, and maybe he can get back to his college form.
Anything else to add, Mr. Mike?
Well, I like the secondary. You got Brandon Flowers. I believe he was spent time with the Chiefs, but he's here now. Casey Hayward, I know because he used to be on the Packers, and I was sad to see him go. He
was a interception machine, led the NFL in interceptions.
So I think they're solid at corner.
Yeah, and that plays true to the numbers here of like they were good against number 6 overall against the number 1 wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
But they allowed a lot up the middle of the field. And that can burn you for big yardage because if the corners are running, or if the receivers are running corner routes, you're spreading everybody to the outside.
Right.
And leave that big gap in the middle of the field.
Big plays up the middle make me question the safety play because that's essentially their role.
In a sense, especially when you're allowing a 30% completion rate of deep passes against the middle of the field.
Yeah, that's high.
But it all depends too on the way the play is called. If you're really good at the play fake,
right, you get a safety to bite. Even if he takes just half a step in, that's enough for a receiver to get behind him. Yeah.
So.
But I like the pass rush that this team has.
Oh, it's dynamic. That up front is great, especially like you pointed out.
Ingram and Bosa together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the first step to flustering a quarterback and trying to
make him make bad choices.
And interrupt the timing of a passing game. We about ready for our TLDW segment?
I think so.
All right, so if this video was too long and you didn't watch, the Los Angeles Chargers were 5-11 last year, which was last place in the division. But they lost a lot of games that they should have won, and every single game was close. Their biggest margin of loss was just 12 points.
Which is amazing to consider the record's 5-11.
Yeah. Like I said, best 5-11 team I can think of. They look good, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They got a lot of weapons there. This year was a struggle because of injuries to some key players in Keenan Allen and Danny Woodhead. Woodhead's a free agent. I'm saying they should bring him back. He's a dynamic threat out of the backfield as a runner and a pass catcher. Keenan Allen back full time is going to help. Gordon, the running back, will only improve in his third season. He went from 0 touchdowns his rookie year to 12 total his sophomore year, and we'll see what he can do in his third season. And but one area they need a lot of help at on offense is at the offensive line position. Every spot except for center on that line should be addressed, in my opinion, because they all struggled. They gave up the second most pressures per pass attempt in the league last year, which is not good when you have an aging quarterback like Phillip Rivers. And on defense
overall, not too shabby. We agree that the corners, so the defensive backs are pretty good. Some safety help is questioned. They give up a lot of big plays up the middle in the deep ball. Edge rush between Ingram and Bosa is arguably one of the best in the league. Jatavius Brown is a rookie linebacker is only going to get better with age. The question came in with Manti Te'o out of Notre Dame. In his fourth season, he's never really played a full season, only played 3 games this year. Doesn't look the same as he once did, so I'm saying that it would be okay to release him. At the very least, if they think they can try to get a full season, a very short-term contract. Nothing long-term, even though he's young. It's just a lot of up-in-the-air questions.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't see why once everyone's healthy and good to go, this team can't be right up there with the rest of the division. This division might be more exciting than the NFC North or AFC North.
It might be because
the AFC North is physical and grudgy because of the histories with the teams.
Yeah.
But this division is just competitive.
Any of these teams, and I think 2 of them will, but any of them could make the playoffs next year.
Easily.
And that's really interesting. I don't think we've been able to say that about any division so far.
Usually there's a standout team or two, and that's about it.
And for the longest time, it's been Denver and no one else, really. Sometimes the Chiefs would sneak in, but it's the Chiefs and the Raiders were on the top last year. And so it's just going to be fascinating to watch all these teams competing next year.
Yeah, it's going to be something we need to keep an eye on.
For sure. I think that's a wrap on the AFC conference.
Wow, it's been a long journey, it feels like.
It
and we're
has.
only halfway done to think about
That's
it.
the crazy
This
part.
is the 16th team we've done.
16 to go.
So thank you guys all for meeting us at the halfway point between this. It's been exciting. It's going to get more exciting, I think, because we're amping up for the NFC conference.
Yes, we are.
Where we follow more teams closely because that's where our favorite teams and home teams are from. But you're in for it. Click the subscribe button so that you can stay tuned for the NFC coverage starting next week. Leave your comments and questions below. What do you think of the Chargers? Are they ready? Are they gearing up? Do you think that the move to LA will be for better or for worse? No longer are they the San Diego Chargers. It's so weird to say.
Rest in peace, San Diego Chargers.
So our email is also in the description below if you have anything you want to submit to us. Our Twitter handle
At 2M_football.
is another reason to keep in touch with everything. And we will see you next week in the NFC.
Looking forward to it. See you next time.